Hi, my name is Heather Tick. I am a pain doctor. I have been a pain doctor for close to 30 years. Pain is everybody's problem. Over 100 million people in the United States are in pain, and there are similar statistics in most countries around the world. And if you aren't in pain yourself, you know somebody who is. Today I want to talk to you about some strategies that can help you with your pain and can help you understand more about why a health approach, trying to get healthy, is actually a better approach to staying healthy and getting out of pain. And I'll give you a lot of nutritional advice about how you can take some first steps to get going on this right away. The important thing to remember is that sometimes changes are difficult to make if you think about making them all at the same time, and that taking them slowly is what the best remedy is for many people. But it's also important to recognize that if you do make a change that seems like a difficult one, if you really decide it's not for you, you can always go back. When we look at how we've been treating pain up to this point, there's a crisis because we've been trying to use drugs and procedures, and we've been harming a lot of people. We've created an addiction problem to prescription opioids, and that is translated into more heroin addicts. One person every 20 minutes kills themselves in an inadvertent, an accidental opioid overdose. I became a pain doctor many years ago, partly because of my own experiences with pain. And there have been episodes in my life going way back to my childhood when I started having headaches. And I was quite young, and the doctors gave me drugs, very serious drugs, that I, even at that young age, was very suspicious of and stopped taking after about the first or second dose because I really didn't like the way they made me feel. And so I had to figure it out myself. And what I tried to do is figure out what caused my headaches and avoid those things, and was able to get by with just some over-the-counter drugs when I really needed them. When I was in medical school, I went to an acupuncture course that wasn't actually part of the curriculum, but that was offered by a group in the medical school. And it was really interesting what I was learning. And when I was in the course and they asked for volunteers to demonstrate treatment on, I volunteered because at that time I had had a shoulder problem with pain and increasing difficulty moving. That had been going on for 6 months and no treatments were helping. And these days I say I was lucky because I couldn't take the pain pills because we now know that they're actually quite risky. So I volunteered, and within a week my shoulder pain was completely gone and I had normal shoulder movement. So what that really pointed out to me is that the body can heal, and we need to find out ways of helping it to heal. And it seemed that the acupuncture was one pathway to doing that. So I set about learning to do more. When I finally got out of medical school and was in practice, and I was doing a general family medicine type of practice, the people who I had the hardest time finding help with in the community, so finding consultants who could help me with difficult cases, they were the pain patients. So I would send my pain patients who I couldn't solve the problems for, I would send them to specialists and physical therapists and others, and they were coming back to me saying they weren't helped. So I decided I needed more education, and that's when I started to study more about muscles, about something called myofascial pain, about ways of helping people heal. I got very interested in nutrition, and I learned more strategies of using acupuncture needles to help people. So I found that I was able to guide people along a path that helped them to heal. And that would make their pain better. And then we would be able to minimize how much they needed surgery, how much they needed drugs. I can be a guide through this system that we have to help you figure out ways of healing your body, using the healthcare resources that are available to you to use different strategies than the usual ones we use in medicine. So I'd like to just give you some of the background of what happens in medicine these days. Our medical system, which is sometimes called a healthcare system, but really is a system that doesn't promote health, it treats disease. And there's a big difference with that. When we focus on the disease, that's when we're more tempted to focus on one or two aspects of it and not see all of the features, all of the little details that go into making up your unique situation, because everybody is unique. When we focus on health, we can be more specific of how to get you healthy. What are the things that you do that might be interfering with your body's healing and might be continuing to keep you in pain because of that? So where I like to start is with nutrition. I want to give you some very practical suggestions now that can help you with your pain. Most people don't realize it, but you change your body chemistry every single time you eat. I know that sounds really dramatic, but it's actually true. You either make your body more inflamed or you make it less inflamed. Well, what do you think happens if you make it more inflamed? Everybody I ask that question of automatically knows that that gives them more pain. But it also makes them more tired. It makes them more at risk of getting diabetes and heart disease and other kinds of diseases too. And it slows down healing. That's one of the main things that it does. So you can improve all those things by changing your diet. And so that's what I'm going to talk to you about. I'm going to give you 15 suggestions, things that you can do. Start with one or two of them that don't seem too hard, and then you can work your way through more of them. And people really do find that this makes a difference to them. So the first one is, if you're eating oatmeal for breakfast, but you're eating instant oats, you would be much better off getting steel-cut oats. The reason is this. In order to make it into instant oats and make it quick cooking, they have to do something to it that makes it turn into sugar in your body very, very quickly. When things turn into sugar quickly, that's called they're being high glycemic. And when that happens, that spikes your blood sugar and it makes your body more inflamed. And so if you switch to steel-cut oats, that actually stabilizes your blood sugar. It gets, you get energy from it. You do get a bit of a boost of your blood sugar, but it doesn't spike up really quickly. The other thing that happens once you spike your blood sugar with any kind of food, it then drops too quickly afterwards. And both of those states, when it's up too high and when it's down too low, are making your body more inflamed. The next thing is that if you're using pancake syrup, look at the ingredients on it, because they tend to be full of fructose, which is a very damaging kind of sugar. It tends to be very hard on your liver. It tends to deposit fat all over your body, including your liver. So a better thing to do would be to take a handful of blueberries, stick them in a blender or a magic bullet or something like that, and put in some water and just blend it, and that can become your syrup. Blueberries are a powerhouse food. They have lots and lots of antioxidants, and those are things that help to fight tissue damage in your body. They help to heal your body, the antioxidants do. So that would be a really good substitute instead of using pancake syrup. Now, a little bit of maple syrup is not too bad of an idea, but it has to be the real stuff, and it has to be a little bit, not gobs of it. The next thing I want to talk about is peanut butter. If you're buying peanut butter, that's a good thing to do, but you have to get the right kind of peanut butter. So a lot of peanut butters, if you look at the ingredients, have a lot of added fat of different kinds that aren't very healthy. They have added salt, and worst of all, they have added sugar. You really just want one or two ingredients in peanut butter. First ingredient should be peanuts. Second ingredient, if you want it, can be a little bit of salt, but that's really it. And if you look for peanut butter that's like that, it's actually a very, very healthy food. But most peanut butters out there that are commercially sold are ones that have lots and lots of ingredients. The fourth thing that I want to talk to you about is using sliced veggies instead of using pita or chips for your dips. So when you slice up cucumbers or you use carrot sticks or celery sticks to scoop up your guacamole or your salsa, you're getting veggies with your veggies. You can use that for any kind of a dip, but I like to use the dips that are basically more veggies. So things like hummus, that is chickpeas and sesame seeds, and of course salsa, which is all vegetables, and guacamole. So that becomes a way of getting lots of vegetables into you without really even trying, and you don't then have the carbs that go along with the pita or the other kinds of chips that people usually use. Use avocado on your sandwiches instead of mayo. Again, it gets more vegetable into you. It's a really, really healthy oil. There's lots of healthy vitamins and minerals in avocados. If you've got extra avocado left over, by the way, it's a really good thing for your skin. So you can use it as a facial mask. But right now we're talking food, so let's get back to that. So there's lower calories in the avocado as opposed to the mayo, and much healthier oils. Number 6 is using, instead of tortilla wraps to make wraps, you can use lettuce wraps. It cuts down on the number of carbs that you're taking in. It fills you up less, but it also gets another vegetable into you. So that's another trick, another win-win. For the 7th tip, you can use mashed bananas in your baking. So if you're making some kind of a cake, you can take mashed bananas and substitute that for half of the amount of butter that you have in the recipe. You could even do that for cookies, and they'll be nice and chewy. That gives you extra fiber. The bananas for this purpose need to be on the ripe side. So when eating bananas, it's best to eat them when they're just slightly ripe, not overripe, but still quite firm, and these ones can be more ripe. But that's a good way of cutting out the butter and getting more fiber and another fruit. When I do a baking, one of the things I really love to use instead of a regular flour made from grains is to use at least half of the flour as a nut flour. So it's ground up nuts. And it can be any of them. Almonds are probably most common, but I've used hazelnuts. Walnuts are absolutely amazing when you use them when you're making cookies or you're making a banana bread. If you're making a bread or a cake, they don't rise as much, but you can add extra baking powder to get it to rise, so that'll will help a little bit. And I personally like the denser consistency, but this makes those products more on the paleo side. Some people will substitute all of the flour with nut flour. Some people will only use part. It depends on what the end product is that you want, and so you can experiment with it and see how it works. Cooking at home is a wonderful thing because you then know exactly what you're eating, and you know that there's not a lot of additives and chemicals in your food. The next thing I want to talk about, I think I'm at number 9, and that is using flax powder, which is ground flax, sometimes it's called flax meal, as a substitute for eggs. Now, I'm not against eating eggs at all, but sometimes you need to not eat as many eggs for one reason or another, maybe a health reason, maybe you have somebody coming over who has allergies, or maybe you just want to introduce some of the healthy omega-3 oils that are in flax. Flax is a very healthy food for other reasons too. And so if you take a tablespoon of flax powder and put it in water for 10 minutes, you can then use that as an egg substitute, and it will still give the same kind of cohesiveness, the same stickiness that you expect to get from the egg. Let's talk for number 10 about protein, source of protein. I like to use salmon, whether it's fresh or frozen, it's fine. It has a lot of very, very healthy omega-3 fish oils, very, very healthy fats. And we know now that fat does not make you fat, and that fat is actually protective for a lot of our organs, and especially really good for our brain. So you can use salmon to replace red meat. And it's very tasty, and it's very, very healthy. And I'm not saying that you should never, ever use red meat, but it is less of a healthy food, especially when it's raised in factory farms. If you are getting organic and free-range meat or wild game, that actually has a lot more of omega-3s, the same kind of healthy oils that are in fish. So that is a healthier form of meat to eat. We often tend in our country to use very large portions of protein as well. 3 ounces is really enough. And if you eat it slowly, if you savor it and you have it with a lot of other healthy filling dishes that can be made out of mostly vegetables, but also beans, legumes, lentils, I always like to use those. Those are all really, really healthy foods. And you can fill up on those and still have the flavors of the food that you love. But I do highly recommend that salmon be on your plate a couple of times a week. The next thing that I want to talk about is using ground turkey instead of ground beef. So this is number 11. So using ground turkey or ground chicken from free-range animals so that they too have had the chance to eat a wide variety of foods and they tend to have healthier meat. I also find it that it is easier to cook and it's more tender when you use the free-range animals. And it is more expensive. But if you're eating smaller portions, so if it costs twice as much but you're eating half the amount, you kind of break even on that, and it doesn't really in the long run cost more. So it's a very good substitute, and you can use lots of seasonings in it, and you can season it in whatever way you want and make it a good, satisfying meal. Quinoa is a really great substitute for rice. Not that rice is all bad. But there are some concerns with white rice because it is more high glycemic. It turns into sugar faster in your body than quinoa. Quinoa has more protein. You also have to be careful of the source of rice because there are some rice from some places in the world that actually have a lot of arsenic in them, and that's not very healthy. You can use quinoa like you would rice without anything on it. You can use it in almost any recipe that you can use rice in. Roast spaghetti squash and use that instead of spaghetti. So roasted spaghetti squash, when you scoop out the flesh of the squash, it has the consistency of spaghetti, and it also comes in little spaghetti-shaped pieces. And you can put your favorite sauce over it. And so it'll have a little bit of the squash flavor, but a nice hearty tomato sauce will totally cover it, and you'll be having, again, vegetables with your vegetables, which is something that's really healthy to do. My number 14 food substitution is using cauliflower. So if you take cauliflower raw and put it into the food processor and grind it up, it comes into the consistency of couscous. And so it's fine little pieces, and a lot of people will use that in recipes for couscous, so you can make tabbouleh out of it or anything else you like to use couscous for, or to even use it as a rice substitute. It's not the same shape as rice, but it can be used as a substitute in a lot of recipes. Now for number 15, I start with dried beans instead of using canned beans. So I take the beans. It takes a little more organization, but it really isn't a lot of trouble. If you take dried beans and stick them in some water, they need to stay in for at least 8 hours, but if they stay in longer, that's okay too. Stick them in the fridge if you're not going to be cooking them after 8 hours. But let them soak in good clean water, then you rinse them off and then you boil them. What happens when you soak beans is that you get rid of things called phytates, and you start the softening process of the beans so that it will cook much faster. You rinse them off to get rid of the rest of the phytates, and then you cook them. So you put them into water enough to cover it by a couple of inches, and you cook them until they're the desired level of tenderness. If you need something really quick, lentils, whether they're red, black, or orange lentils, don't have to be pre-soaked, and those cook very quickly. They cook almost as quickly as rice does. About 20 minutes will do it for those. The red ones cook particularly quickly because they're really small. And I mentioned phytates before, but I just want to mention why they're important. They keep your body from absorbing some of the nutrients in the food that you're eating, so that's why it's important to soak them. Now, why is that better than canned beans? Canned beans are usually in cans that have plastic liners in them, so they're absorbing some of those chemicals, and they've also got preservatives in them. So when you're making them yourself, you know that they don't have to have those things. Now, that being said, if it's a matter of You're going to be too much trouble to cook if you have to cook them yourself and not use a can, then by all means use a can. I do sometimes too. So don't worry about that. And so the very last thing that I want to talk to you about is the way in which you eat. It's really important to pay attention to the food you're eating and be present. Don't watch television, talk to your family, or just sit quietly yourself. Breathe, take a few deep breaths and relax yourself before you have your meal. And make it like a meditation, just a brief time of being present. Chew your food, taste your food, really enjoy your food. It will actually help you to know when you're full more easily. So many of us, when we're eating our food quickly without thinking about it, we just eat whatever's on our plate. And these days in America, we supersize a lot of things. And we eat it down, and we've eaten way past the time that our body is really full. But we were eating so fast, we didn't notice. So I want to make sure you understand you don't have to change all of your habits. You don't have to do all of these things. Just start with a few and see how you feel. Start with one. Pick the easiest one and start with that and see how it feels. It's a gradual transition, that's fine. I mean, some people will hear this and they'll say, wow, I want to do it all. Don't get me wrong, you're perfectly welcome to do it all if you want to. But I'm not trying to take away things from you. I'm just trying to enhance the way you do things to help you feel better. So wishing you good health and healthy eating and all the pleasure that comes from healthy eating.